The earthy scent of essential oils and the alchemy of botanicals had always been my world, ever since I was a little girl. In my family's small artisanal cosmetics workshop, tucked away behind our house in a charming countryside town, I was captivated. Willow Creek Botanicals wasn't just our family's livelihood, it was my calling. While my older sister, Olivia, dreamed of runway glamour and magazine covers, I was there, hands-on, researching native ingredients, perfecting extracts, dreaming of transforming our good but homespun soaps and creams into a nationally desired brand. And I did it. The Forest Haven line, which I developed after years of research with rare local botanicals, won an award for innovation in sustainable cosmetics. Our sales quintupled. I had a business plan for expansion, new formulations, international certifications, all meticulously detailed, until that Sunday. A family lunch, the afternoon sun gilding the porch, the scent of freshly baked apple pie in the air. My father, Mr. Harrison, cleared his throat, his usual way of preparing for a bombshell. "Well, family, I have an important announcement." My stomach nodded. Was it finally the approval for the new lab I had fought so hard for? With the tremendous success of Forest Haven, I've decided we need a fresh, more modern face to lead our marketing and brand image. Olivia will be taking over as our brand director. I almost choked on my own breath. Olivia, who only used the products if they were free and constantly criticized the rustic packaging? My voice came out as a whisper, but I tried to maintain my composure. "Dad, what about all my strategic planning? The development of new products for export?" He looked at me with that condescending patience that always unraveled me. "Ava, my dear, you have a natural talent for creating formulas, that's undeniable. You stay there in your lab working your magic, but to give the brand glamour, to charm the influencers and the luxury market, that's Olivia's gift." Olivia, sitting across from me, gave a subtle smirk, a glint of triumph in her eyes, her glass of white wine untouched. She'd never bothered to learn a supplier's name when Willow Creek Botanicals could barely pay its bills before my line turned things around. Now, with record-breaking profits, she was the visionary. My voice cracked, but it came out firm. "I created Forest Haven. Without that line, you wouldn't even have a company to pass on to anyone." My father let out a short laugh, almost a sneer. He reached into his shirt pocket, pulled out his worn wallet, and tossed 2 crumpled $100 bills onto the embroidered tablecloth. "For your help, $200. For the years of studying chemistry and cosmetology. For the sleepless nights hunched over formulations. For the innovation that pulled Willow Creek Botanicals from the brink and turned it into a $5 million gem." My mother looked away, clearly uncomfortable, but remained silent. No one said a word. I looked at my father, the man I had idolized, and it hit me. It was never about competence or results. It was about favoritism. "I see," my voice came out, surprisingly calm. I picked up the money, folded it meticulously, and put it in my wallet. I stood up. "Dad, don't be so dramatic," he grumbled. I forced a smile. "I'm not. I'm just excusing myself from the stage. Since my role in this play is clearly that of an extra, I'll leave the spotlight to the leading lady." Olivia let out a muffled chuckle. My mother started, "Ava, dear," but I was already turning away, my footsteps echoing on the wooden floor. I didn't slam the door. I simply left. The next morning, I arrived at the workshop earlier than usual. The air was still crisp, with that scent of damp earth I loved so much. The place had changed a lot in the past year. Before, the atmosphere was heavy, employees whispering about potential layoffs, suppliers chasing overdue payments. Now, there was a new, vibrant energy. My Forest Haven line had revolutionized the natural cosmetics market, not just with innovative products, but also by optimizing extraction processes that once took days into mere minutes, ensuring the purity of the active ingredients. We had secured partnerships with renowned spas, exported to small boutiques in Europe, but today, something felt off. As I crossed the courtyard towards my small lab, which also served as my office, I noticed furtive glances, conversations that hushed as I passed. I reached the door and found it ajar. Inside, my world had been turned upside down. My research bench, cleared. My computer, gone. The modest nameplate that read Ava Harrison, Research and Development, had been pried off the door, leaving the faint outline of old adhesive. And sitting in my chair, casually flipping through a catalog of luxury packaging, was Olivia. She looked up, a bright, artificial smile on her lips. "Oh, good morning, Ava. Didn't Dad tell you? I'll be needing this space. It's more central. You know? For receiving important visitors. You'll be reporting to me now." A knot formed in my stomach, but my expression remained impassive. What will my position be? My voice was steady, unwavering. Olivia tilted her head, as if considering a grand joke. She shrugged. We'll figure something out. Maybe something in quality control. Testing batches, that sort of thing. Quality control. In the company I had rebuilt. In the company whose best-selling products were my creations. She smirked. Actually, Dad suggested you take some time off. A long vacation. Relax a bit. Maybe work on that herb garden of yours at home. But don't worry, she added, with feigned generosity. You'll still be part of Willow Creek Botanicals. In some capacity. I took a slow, deep breath. The blood pounded in my ears. They wanted to erase me. After everything I had done. After every sacrifice. Every late night. Every solution I had created to keep this company afloat. They were discarding me like an empty jar, as if I were worth that $200. I looked at my sister, then at the Willow Creek Botanicals logo, painted on the hallway wall. A name that once meant family, tradition, pride. Now it only brought the bitter taste of betrayal. But I didn't argue. I didn't protest. I simply nodded. Understood. Then, I turned and walked out. They thought they had won. They thought I would disappear quietly. That I would settle for whatever scraps they threw my way. Maybe even beg to stay. But as I stepped into the old, noisy freight elevator, and the metal doors slid shut, a single thought burned in my mind. They have no idea what's coming. The first thing I did was vanish. Not literally. The next day, I was there, punctual, sitting at the wobbly little desk they'd found for me in a forgotten corner of the stockroom, between boxes of packaging and empty jars, surrounded by interns who barely knew who I was. But I didn't fight back. I didn't argue. I watched. And in less than a week, the picture became painfully clear. Olivia was completely out of her depth. She hadn't the faintest idea how to manage a growing company, let alone one that depended on constant innovation in formulations. She spent her days in endless meetings with advertising agencies, making decisions based on gut feelings and what her influencer friends thought was trendy, ignoring market reports and the warnings of our most experienced chemists. She fired Mr. Henderson, our master soap maker of 20 years, who dared to question a switch to a cheaper, lower-quality supplier, and replaced him with an image consultant who knew more about color palettes than pH balances. Willow Creek Botanicals wasn't just vulnerable. It was, once again, teetering on the brink, and I had built every pillar she was now diligently trying to demolish. That's when I made my decision. If they didn't want me at Willow Creek Botanicals, I would build something bigger. One cold evening, long after most employees had gone home, I sat in a simple diner, the kind with freshly brewed coffee, across from three of the most capable people I had ever worked with. Leo, our former financial manager, the numbers wizard who had saved us from bankruptcy years before and knew every tax loophole like the back of his hand. Marina, the best formulation chemist I'd ever known, responsible for stabilizing my most ambitious creations. And Thomas, our former packaging designer, who had an incredible talent for translating a product's soul into art. All three had quietly resigned in the past few weeks. They weren't fools. They had seen the ship sinking. Leo adjusted his glasses, his expression serious. Ava, what's the play? I looked at them, one by one, then pulled a folder from my bag. Inside was everything I had been working on in secret. We're building something new, I said simply. I didn't need much to convince them. They were in. There was one thing Olivia and my father had completely overlooked: the formulations. Yes, Willow Creek Botanicals owned the commercial rights to the products I developed while I was there. But my original research, the notebooks detailing the studies on ingredient compatibility, the concentration variations that led to the Forest Haven line, that was mine. And the new line, even more potent and featuring even more exclusive ingredients that I had been researching on my own, that had never been logged into their systems, it was still mine. I spent the next month working in absolute silence, like an ant, refining each formula, perfecting extraction methods, making everything more potent, purer, more luxurious. Then, I presented my portfolio, not to Willow Creek Botanicals, of course, but to their biggest competitors, those international brands that had always eyed the richness of our local biodiversity with envy, but had never managed to access it with the same depth and respect that I could. Within 3 weeks, I had 3 solid proposals on the table. By the end of the month, I closed the first major deal, an exclusive licensing and development agreement worth $20 million. And just like that, in the blink of an eye, I wasn't just competing with Willow Creek Botanicals. I was about to redefine the market they thought they dominated. My new brand, Veridian Bloom Cosmetics, was born with robust investment and a promise of real innovation. The first sign of trouble for my father's company came quietly. A large, chain of luxury spas, a loyal client of Willow Creek Botanicals for years, suddenly canceled its main contract. Then another, and another. Olivia panicked. She started demanding results, firing people randomly, blaming the sales team, the suppliers, the economic crisis, everyone but herself. But the truth was simple. The market had evolved. The new generation of natural cosmetics, the one I had perfected, was now powering their competitors' products. Willow Creek Botanicals, with its stagnant formulas and superficial image, suddenly looked outdated, a relic, and I was just getting started. The turning point came 6 months later. I was in a lavish ballroom of a 5-star hotel in New York City, sipping champagne, as the master of ceremonies concluded his presentation. It was the Beauty Industry Innovators Gala. Every CEO, investor, and executive in the sector was there, and that year, I was the main honoree. When my name was announced, I stood and walked onto the stage, my heels clicking on the polished marble floor. "Tonight, we recognize the visionaries driving the industry forward," the host said. Ava Harrison, creator of the most revolutionary line of biocosmetics on the market, has transformed how global companies view sustainability and efficacy. Her company, Veridian Bloom Cosmetics, is already valued at over $150 million. The applause was deafening. But as I looked out into the crowd, my eyes locked onto a familiar face. My father, sitting in the back, next to Olivia. Their company was, once again, on the verge of bankruptcy, and they both knew it. I smiled, not out of spite, not out of revenge, but because I had finally learned the lesson they had tried so hard to teach me by force. I didn't need their validation. I had won on my own terms, and this time, there was nothing they could do to stop me. My journey of overcoming was just beginning to take shape, and every small step felt like a victory. If stories like mine, of turnarounds and justice, inspire you, don't forget to leave that like, so I know you're enjoying it, and so more people can discover this strength. Well, but getting back to what matters, their downfall was still to come. It had been exactly 1 year since that humiliating Sunday lunch. 1 year since my father tossed those crumpled bills on the table and told me I wasn't leadership material. 1 year since my sister smirked condescendingly, knowing she was being handed something she'd never worked for. 1 year since I walked out of there without a fight, only to win the war. Now, sitting at the head of the Veridian Bloom Cosmetics conference table, reviewing our latest quarterly report, I could barely suppress a smile. Revenue, $95 million. Market share, 35% and climbing. Willow Creek Botanicals? It was bleeding out. I had systematically dismantled every advantage they once held. Their best clients had jumped ship to us. Their stock, when it still had any value, had plummeted, and their latest financial report, leaked to the trade press the week before, confirmed the worst. They were on the brink of total collapse, and that's when the inevitable happened. Promptly at 10 a.m., my assistant, the efficient Julia, buzzed me on the intercom. "Ava, your father and sister are here to see you." I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. Finally, it had come to this. Send them in. They walked in like ghosts. Olivia's designer wardrobe couldn't hide the deep dark circles under her eyes and the exhaustion etched on her face. My father, always so composed, so sure of himself, looked older, stooped, defeated. They had lost, and they knew it. "Ava, my," father began, his voice carefully controlled. "We need to talk." I gestured to the leather chairs in front of my desk. They hesitated, probably because they sensed that, for the first time in their lives, they were stepping into my territory, under my rules. But they sat. Olivia shifted uncomfortably, her manicured nails tapping against the armrest. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Dad sighed. "Look, we've had our differences, but at the end of the day, we're family. Willow Creek Botanicals is in trouble. We need your help." Ah, there it was. I let the silence stretch, watching them squirm. Finally, I spoke. "And what exactly are you asking me to do?" Dad leaned forward. "We're willing to offer you a leadership role, something meaningful. I realize now that perhaps we underestimated you." I tilted my head. "You realize now?" Olivia finally looked up, her expression tight. "Ava, don't be petty. We need you, okay?" I laughed. A genuine laugh. "You need me?" I repeated. "That's funny, because a year ago you told me I didn't have leadership qualities, that I was only good for staying in the lab." My father had the audacity to look frustrated. "You know how business works. Decisions were made, but now we have to move forward. If you come back, we can rebuild Willow Creek Botanicals together." There it was again. Control. They didn't want me. They wanted to own me. "What position are you offering?" I asked, feigning curiosity. Dad straightened his shoulders. as if preparing to seal the deal of the century. "You'd be second in command, right under Olivia." I blinked, and then I laughed again, louder this time. Olivia flushed. "Ava, grow up. You created a few formulas? Fine, but that doesn't mean you know how to run a company at our level." I stopped laughing. I leaned forward, resting my arms on the glass desk between us, and I made sure my voice was as cold as ice. "Olivia," I said softly, "my company is worth $150 million. Yours is weeks away from bankruptcy. Explain to me again which one of us doesn't know how to run a company." Silence. Pure, satisfying silence. Dad cleared his throat. "Ava, please." It was that word that did it. Please. The same man who had dismissed me, belittled me, thrown money in my face as if I were an unworthy employee instead of his daughter, was now begging, and I had never felt more at peace. "No." Olivia stiffened. "Excuse me?" I said no, I repeated. "I don't need Willow Creek Botanicals. You needed me and you threw me away. You made your choices, and now you get to live with them." Dad exhaled, sharply, frustration creeping into his voice. "Are you seriously going to let your own family fail?" "I didn't let anything happen," I replied smoothly. "You destroyed this company the moment you put Olivia in charge." Olivia pushed back from her chair, standing abruptly. Her face was red now. "You're just bitter," she snapped. "You've always been jealous of me." I gave her a slow, amused smile. "Jealous? Olivia, I don't need to be jealous. I already have everything you ever wanted." I stood as well, smoothing down my silk blouse. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a real company to run." My father left in furious silence. Olivia stormed out, but before she disappeared through the doors, she turned back. "I hope you're happy, Ava." I met her gaze, utterly calm. "I am." She walked out without another word, and as the doors closed behind her, I sat back down, exhaled, then I smiled, because for the first time in my life, I was finally free. The moment the doors closed behind my father and Olivia, I allowed myself a long, slow exhale. They thought they could walk in here, throw a few hollow apologies at me, and expect me to come running back to fix their mess. They had no idea who I had become, but as much as I enjoyed watching them squirm, I knew this wasn't over. Willow Creek Botanicals was dying, and when a sinking ship goes down, it tends to pull everything and everyone down with it. The question was, would I let that happen? The news broke 3 days later. Willow Creek Botanicals officially declares bankruptcy. It was everywhere. Business magazines, online forums, even national headlines. Former natural cosmetics giant Willow Creek Botanicals collapses. Poor leadership decisions sink a multi-million-dollar company. How nepotism and lack of vision killed Willow Creek Botanicals. And the best part? Every article credited the company's former success to me. They all pointed out the obvious. The only reason Willow Creek Botanicals had survived its first near collapse was because of the Forest Haven line I had built, and once I was gone, it was only a matter of time. I was in a strategic planning meeting when my assistant, Julia, knocked discreetly on the conference room door. "Ava, you might want to see this." She handed me a tablet open to a news page. I scanned it quickly, a small smirk curving my lips. As I reached the last paragraph, Willow Creek Botanicals was being liquidated. Everything was up for sale. The small factory, the old machinery, what remained of the inventory, even the Willow Creek Botanicals name itself. My father was desperate. He had over-leveraged the company, taken out reckless loans in a desperate bid to save it. And now, the banks were seizing everything, and I could buy it. The poetic justice was almost too perfect. That evening, as I sat in my penthouse apartment overlooking the city lights, I thought about what I really wanted. I had spent so much time proving myself, so much energy fighting against the people who had dismissed me, betrayed me, belittled me, and now I had already won. Did I really need to crush them further? I thought back to that afternoon, 1 year ago, when my father had tossed those $200 onto the table like it was a tip for a waitress. Like I was worth nothing. And just like that, my decision became crystal clear. I made my move the next morning. I didn't go through an investment firm. I didn't use a third party. I wanted them to know exactly who was taking everything from them. So I called the bankruptcy attorney handling Willow Creek's liquidation myself. "I'd like to place a direct bid on all of Willow Creek Botanicals' assets," I said, including the name. The attorney hesitated. "Ms. Harrison, do you understand what that would entail?" I smiled. "I understand perfectly." A week later, I was sitting in the same shabby boardroom my father had once ruled like a king. Only this time, I was the one holding all the cards. The paperwork was spread out before me, a sleek black and gold pen resting on top of the final contract. With a single signature, Willow Creek Botanicals would belong to me. The small empire my father had built, the one he refused to let me lead, was now mine. Olivia and Dad sat across from me, both ashen-faced. Dad looked like he had aged another 10 years in the past week. Olivia wouldn't even make eye contact. "I still can't believe you're doing this," she muttered. I raised an eyebrow. "Doing what? Buying a failed company? Acquiring a brand name that no longer holds any value?" She scowled. "You know what I mean." I leaned back in my chair, tapping my fingers against the worn wood of the table. "Funny," I mused. "A year ago, you didn't think I was capable of running a company, but now you're acting like I have too much power." Dad exhaled sharply. "Ava, just sign the damn papers." I picked up the pen, paused, and then I slid the documents back across the table. Dad blinked. Olivia frowned. "What is this?" Dad asked. "A counteroffer," I said simply. He picked up the papers and scanned the first page. His eyes widened. "You're dissolving Willow Creek Botanicals?" Olivia gasped. "You're shutting it down?" I smiled. "That's right." My father looked like he might explode. "Why would you do that?" I leaned forward, my voice calm. "Because I don't need Willow Creek Botanicals. I never did, but I do want one thing." I pointed to a single clause on the last page. Dad followed my finger, and his breath caught. Olivia snatched the document and read it aloud, her voice shaking. "All remaining rights to the Willow Creek Botanicals name, past formulation patents, and related intellectual property will be absorbed by Veridian Bloom Cosmetics and permanently retired." She looked up at me, furious. "You're not just buying it, you're erasing it." I met her gaze, unwavering. Yes, Willow Creek Botanicals would never exist again. The name would never be rebuilt. The company would never be resurrected. It would simply disappear, just like they had tried to make me disappear. Dad clenched his jaw. "You're just doing this to get back at us." "No," I corrected. "I'm doing this because some things deserve to die." I picked up the pen again. This time, I signed. And just like that, it was over. The Willow Creek Botanicals era was gone. And in its place, Veridian Bloom Cosmetics soared. With no competition from my father's failed empire, we expanded rapidly, securing exclusive contracts that once belonged to them. Their legacy had been erased. Mine had only just begun. 3 months later, I received a letter. No return address, just a simple handwritten note inside. "Ava, I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope one day you'll understand." "Dad," I stared at it for a long moment. Then I tossed it into the ecological fireplace in my living room. And as the flames consumed the last remnant of Willow Creek Botanicals, I smiled, because I had finally, completely, and utterly won. 3 months had passed since I erased Willow Creek Botanicals from existence. 3 months since I signed that final document, ensuring the name and its outdated formulas would never rise again. 3 months since my father and Olivia walked out of that boardroom with nothing but the weight of their own choices. And yet, for the first time since this all began, I felt a profound peace. Veridian Bloom Cosmetics was thriving. Without the shadow of Willow Creek Botanicals, we had expanded aggressively, securing every major client that had once been my father's pride. Revenue, $180 million in the last 6 months. Market dominance in the luxury biocosmetics niche, 55%. Status, undisputed leader in innovation and sustainability in the sector. But the numbers weren't what satisfied me most. What filled me was walking through the corridors of our labs and offices every morning and seeing a company built on merit, seeing employees who were there because of their talent, not their last name. Seeing a company I had built without needing my family's approval, proving that true inheritance is what you cultivate with your own hands. But as much as I wanted to move forward, the past has a funny way of giving us one last wave, especially when I received the invitation. It arrived in a plain envelope, no return address, just my name elegantly handwritten. Annual Charity Ball of the Orchid Society. I had completely forgotten about it. Every year, for as long as I could remember, my parents hosted the most exclusive social event in our region, back when they still had prestige and a company to show off. This year, my father wasn't the host. Another family, who had bought my parents' former mansion at auction after the bankruptcy, had taken over the tradition. The invitation was a mere formality. No doubt whoever was organizing it now had no idea about the history between me and the former owners of the house. It was by chance I even received one. But instead of throwing it in the trash, I made a decision. I was going, not to prove anything, not for revenge, but to close this chapter, once and for all. On the night of the ball, I arrived in a sleek, yet understated designer gown, stepping out of my car with the quiet confidence of a woman who had nothing left to prove. The event was as extravagant as I remembered. Crystal chandeliers, sophisticated ambient music, and a sea of local elites sipping champagne as if they still owned the world. Except this time, the most influential and powerful person in that room was me, and they all knew Whispers followed me as I made my way inside. Isn't that Ava Harrison? Yes, from Veridian Bloom. They say she bought out her father's company and shut it down. I ignored them. I wasn't there for them. I was there for one specific reason, and then I saw them, my father and sister. They were no longer the center of attention. They weren't surrounded by business people discussing million-dollar deals. Instead, they were off to the side, near a pillar by the dessert table, almost invisible, a shadow of their former selves. My father looked smaller than I remembered. His once commanding presence had faded, replaced by something I had never seen in him before: regret. Olivia, on the other hand, she still held her head high, but I could see the cracks in her mask, the way her fingers clenched around the stem of her cheap champagne flute, the way her eyes darted towards me, then quickly away. For the first time in our lives, the power was all mine, and they both knew it. I walked towards them, my heels clicking softly on the marble floor. Olivia stiffened. My father turned, and for a split second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Not anger, not resentment, just defeat. "Ava," he said, his voice quieter and hoarser than I'd ever heard it. I tilted my head slightly. "Dad." A long, heavy silence stretched between us. Then he sighed. "I suppose this is the part where you gloat." I smiled faintly. "No, Dad. This is the part where I say goodbye." Olivia blinked, confused. "What?" "I didn't come here to rub this in your faces," I continued. "I didn't come to remind you of everything you lost, because frankly that's no longer my concern." I set my empty glass on a passing tray and met my father's eyes one last time. "For years, I spent my life trying to earn your approval, trying to prove I was good enough." I exhaled slowly. "But I don't need that anymore." I turned to Olivia. "And I don't hate you. I never did. I just pity you." Her face tightened. "Because unlike you, I didn't need to steal anyone's power," I said. "I built my own." Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. For the first time, she had nothing to say. There, seeing Olivia's empty expression, I knew the cycle of pain they had started had finally closed, at least for me. And if you've made it this far and want to keep following other thrilling narratives about women who rewrote their own stories, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell, because there's always new content showing how the tables can turn. But in that ballroom, I still had one last thing to do before completely turning the page. I gave them both one last look. Then I turned and walked away. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but because for the first time in my life I was free. I left the ball without looking back, without the need to prove anything more. Because this was never about revenge. This was about becoming who I was meant to be. And as I stepped into my car, heading back to a company, a legacy, a future that was entirely my own, I smiled, because this wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning.